Welcome to the Iferia TechCast. Here we bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today we are joined by John Lester, a sales expert with over 40 years of experience, who believes that nothing happens until someone sells something. He is the creator of the sustainable sales system, a psychology-driven framework designed to help business owners move from fear and guesswork to a reliable, repeatable sales process. He specializes in reframing sales as a service, not a sleazy necessity. In this episode, we'll break down his system for clearing the fog around sales and how technical founders can build a process that feels authentic and effective. John, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here, sir.
Thank you, Ezekiel. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here with your guests.
Great. Let's dive in. So your motto is nothing happens until someone sells something. I find that really fascinating. So for the engineers and builders in our audience who often focus purely on the product, so why is this such a fundamental truth they need to understand?
Well, if we're talking about a business, the purpose of a business is to provide value in exchange for some kind of monetary return.
Hmm.
So that is, for all intents and purposes, a sale. So if you cannot provide the value to the other side, and value has to be something that they perceive, so they have to see the value. It's not your value, it's their value. They won't give you money. If you don't get money, you don't have a business. Now, you might want to do what you're doing for free, but that's not a business. So that's the whole idea for that. So until somebody actually sells something, until you have a transaction with a customer, well, until you have a transaction, you don't have a customer. But until you have a paying customer, you don't have a business. And until you have repeatable paying customers, you don't have a sustainable business. Make
All
sense?
right. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, John, you've built the sustainable sales system over 40 years. So, for the systemic thinkers listening, what are like the core components or modules of this framework?
Sure. The first thing I would want people to understand and come to grips with is that most of what, at least here in the United States, so I can only use the United States, I'm sure it's true with your listening audience also, most of what is being told and taught about sales and has been taught and told about sales for the last 30, 40, 50 years doesn't necessarily work anymore. Sales has changed because the buying dynamic has changed. And most of that, quite honestly, is due to advances in technologies. Give you one example. Years ago, and where most selling is based on, years ago, the salesperson controlled the flow of information to the buyer. And the salesperson was able to restrict or supply the buyer with information to help them make a decision. The reality of today is that the buyer probably knows more about you and your product, about your competition, about your pricing, about your reviews than you do or that your salesperson does. So they come into the situation in a much different position than much of what is taught and told is structured upon. So that's the first thing we have to understand. If somebody doesn't want to appreciate the fact that the information they have in their head might not be of value any longer, then there's not much I can do to help them. So that's the first thing. So there's a question I ask everybody before I help them. And I say, do you agree that you may be part or all of the problem preventing you from being successful? And if they
Hmm.
don't, I can't help them. I just can't help them. Okay. So now let's get down to some of the nuts and bolts. And I'm just going to give you the overview of the framework. The framework is called MUVS, M-U-V-S, and it stands for Mindset, Understanding, Value, and Sales Talk. And these are the things I work with folks to understand so they are comfortable with selling. Most people aren't comfortable selling. So I want people to be comfortable selling. And what I do is I uncover the things that are making it uncomfortable. That's all in MUVS, and give them new frameworks. Now, this isn't just here, read this and you'll be successful. This is working with folks to make sure that these changes actually happen in their mind. The first one, MUVS, is for mindset. How do you feel about selling? How do you feel about sales? How do you feel about customers? So what's going on in your head? What has been programmed in your head? Because what is in our head, 60% of it has been in there since before we were 5 years old.
Hmm.
And we don't even know that it's there. That's okay. So it's difficult when you're making decisions based on information that you don't even know where it comes from. The first thing you have to do is you have to start to be aware of your own prejudices, of your own mental models, of your own mindsets. That's the M part. The U part, understanding, is understanding the other side of the table, understanding the buyer. Where's the buyer coming from? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Why are they making this decision? How do they make decisions? There's a lot of work that goes into that part of it. Then there's value. Most people, especially on the technical side, most people try to sell a product. Buyers don't want to buy a product. Buyers want to buy a resolution to a problem they're having. You might deliver it with a product, but what they really are trying to understand is, one, do you understand what I'm trying to do? And are you the right person to help me solve that problem? Not just buy the product, because you don't get resolution on buying the product. You only get resolution on implementing the product and seeing its results. And then the last one, the S is sales talk, is how do you speak to a buyer? How do you speak to somebody during a sales conversation? What are the right things to say? What are the wrong things to say? And this isn't scripting, Ezekiel. It's not what's going on here. It's understanding the dynamics of the conversation.
Hmm.
The decision to buy, in most cases, is made in the first 180 seconds of the conversation. Think about that for a second. The decision to buy, the subconscious decision to buy, is made by the buyer in the first 180 seconds.
Wow.
Now, many times the subconscious has told them not to buy, and you spend the next 43, 44 minutes of them listening and hemming and hawing, going, I wish this was over. So how do you control that situation? How do you control that initial moments so that you can move on to the rest of it? That's all part of sales talk. So that's the framework that I have. And then there are pieces within the framework to ensure success.
John, you talk about fear, fog, and friction as the three main problems. So, why would you call these problems? Which of these is the most common barrier for, say, for example, technical founders and engineers? And again, why?
But let me frame that for you. Not everybody has these. There are some people that are absolutely fine. That percentage is relatively small, but there are people that don't have this problem at all. But what we're talking about is, what is it that's preventing you from moving forward? And I would not say that there's any one that is more prevalent than another. I mean, fear, that this goes back to your mindset, to your understanding in MUVS. Fear is, I don't want to sell. I can't sell. There's something that bothers me about it. I'm scared of it. I'm scared of getting rejected. I'm scared of not knowing the answers. I don't have the confidence. That's fear. And when we break it down and help people understand what they do know and why they are an expert and where they should go and where they shouldn't go, that fear kind of goes away. So somebody says, all right, I'm not really that scared of it, but I'm not really certain as to what to do. I don't know what the process is. So now we have the value in MUVS and we have the sales talk. And those two components are going to help that person through that fog. So those, and the third is very similar to it. So it's a question of where your mind is and what's blocking you. What state are you in? I don't know that anybody's more so in one than another. And somebody can be really in both, or somebody can move from one to another. But for the folks that want to be successful, that aren't naturals, if you will, in selling or haven't trained themselves in selling, we find that these are the major problems that we have to overcome for them. And the way we do it is with the MUVS framework. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was really insightful. So, I am curious about the psychology. So, how do you help a logical, data driven person reframe sales from feeling like manipulation to what you call a mutually beneficial act.
Part of that is it's interesting you use that word. I'm glad you used that word because that's very important to illustrate. Have you ever been to a chiropractor?
No, no, not really, but I know what a chiropractor does.
What does the chiropractor do?
Kind of like, the I know I don't know the exact words to use to put it, but I know they work with shifting your bones to the right position to make you feel better.
So do you know what the terminology is? I'll tell you the terminology. Terminology is the spinal
Yeah,
manipulation.
yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, is manipulate a bad word? See, we
I don't think, no, in
no,
that context, you
in
wouldn't
that
call,
context.
yeah.
Right, right. But we have a tendency, and English in the United States, even more so than English in England, is a very strange language because English in the United States, you have to understand the United States is a country that has grown through immigration. And anytime immigration comes into any country, any environment, they bring with them certain language and
Mm,
certain definitions of language. And so we have in this country a language that has more exceptions to our rules than we do rules. I don't know if you know that or not, but it's true. Whereas many other languages, French as an example is a very structured language. He is referred to differently as she. I've heard that in Eskimo uh, language, there's, I don't know what it is, 32 different words for snow because they express snow differently. And I'm sure, any language you will find this to be true. So we take this word manipulation, and if you talk about it from a chiropractor's perspective, it's very positive. If you talk
yeah.
about it from a sales perspective, it's very negative. So the first thing that's going on is there's confusion in the person's mind because they're mixing things up.
Mm,
So we start by trying to figure out what is it that bothers you? I mean, what are you thinking about? What are you talking about? And it's a lot of this comes down to, as I said before, the mental models that are instilled in us before we're 5, which drives our perspective. So if I give you another example, if I say to somebody, "Are you scared of a lion?" Well, most people would go, "Yes, I'm scared of a lion." And then you say, "Come here," and you hand them a baby lion cub, which isn't going to hurt anything. It's just they're too cute. They're not going to hurt
yeah.
anything. Well, how can you be scared of a lion if you're holding them and petting them, right?
Mm,
So there's a lot of that. People have misconceptions about who the customer is, what the customer is about, what the customer is trying. There are many people who believe that the only thing that the customer cares about is price. That's not true. There are many people that believe that because their product does wonderful things, that everybody should be enamored by their product and want to buy. That's not the way people buy. So there's readjustments in the mind of the seller or the business owner, and there's readjustments in their mind about the buyer. And those are things that we have to clear up. It's just nobody's really gone down that path with them before. If you go to
yeah.
school for sales and you've been selling for 20 years, selling is natural. I mean, it's what you do. If you've never done it before and nobody's trained you but nobody's taught you properly, it's going to seem strange. It's going to seem wrong. It's going to seem weird. So we try to bridge that gap.
Wow, that was a really brilliant response, dear sir. So, you are an expert in root cause analysis. So, when you see a company with inconsistent sales, what is the most common root cause you find that that has nothing to do with the sales pitch itself?
There isn't really one because if I go into an organization and typically what I'll be told is we don't have enough sales. Our salespeople are horrible. They're not good. Things like that. Okay. The competition is too strong for us. The market doesn't want to buy. And we start to look at it. And what we find is that there's inconsistent messaging. So the messaging isn't the same from the time that the person first hears your message and sees your website all the way to when they speak to a salesperson, when they get transferred from a salesperson to an implementation person and the follow up. The messaging and the flow and the feeling is not the same throughout. Many cases I'll find where the person does not understand what the role of sales is. They think sales should do one thing and sales should do another. That messes them up. But what I will say is most cases we find that there is not one problem. We find that there are multiple problems, anywhere from 5 to 10. I remember one case we identified 35 problems. And the client had come in and said, my salespeople don't know what they're doing. Well, what does that mean? 35 problems we identified with them. And some were hard and some were relatively easy. Communication, I will say, in an organization, so I'm not talking about one individual person, so I'm not talking about a solopreneur. When there are 5 or 6 or 10 people, and there's been studies done that said that once an organization gets past 10 people, their communication systems break down. Now, I'm not saying they completely crash, but I'm saying you start to see a degrading of the efficiency of the organization and the efficiency of their communications. 10 people is not a lot of people. So the big one of the big ones, and this is the V in value, I'll talk about. In fact, we talk all about them, all 4 of them. The mindset is wrong in the organization and in the leaders of the organization. They don't understand the buyer. They don't understand how to express value as opposed to product. And they don't know how to talk the sales talk. That's why MUV is in there. But I wouldn't do the whole MUV series if they weren't all important. If I could go in and say, hey, I'll give you one thing to change, then I would. But what I found after all these years is it's not one thing. It's many things. And many people don't have the patience to go through and understand them and fix them, even though it doesn't take long. There's no silver bullet, Ezekiel. Sorry.
All right. Looking at your 4 decades in sales, what is the single biggest misconception about selling that has stubbornly persisted, and what's the truth that replaces it?
Probably the single biggest misconception is that selling is about convincing. And selling is absolutely not about convincing. So if you look at old movies and old sales training, and it was always about how do I trap the person into saying yes? How do I position the person so they say yes?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. Did it work in certain cases? Sure. Will it work today in some cases? Of course it will. Of course it will. And there are some people that are extremely good at convincing or extremely good at manipulation, either way you want to look at it. But that's not the way most sales work, and that's not the way most people are going to be comfortable and successful selling. Selling should be about helping the buyer understand the problem that they're trying to solve, because most don't, and then helping them make educated decisions towards finding a solution. It's not always going to be your solution. It's just not. And it's a lot of work when you stop to think about it. It's a lot of work for the return that you're asking. Now, if you really can do that, so I'll tell you and your audience something a little bit different. If you really can help the buyer, so first of all, if you can earn their trust, if you can help them identify the true problem and the true impact of the problem and the value of a solution, if you can do all of that, that's worth a lot of money to a customer. You're probably underpricing your offering because you look at your offering and price it based on the product, not on the value. But if you can do that for a customer, charge more.
Fantastic. John, you've mentioned that being a volunteer fireman has influenced your approach. So what's a lesson from firefighting that you apply to putting out fires in sales processes today?
So the interesting, it's a good question, by the way. The interesting part about firefighting, and we talk about the 10-minute window. In other words, from the time an alarm goes off and the fire department is identified and dispatched. Now, again, we're volunteers, so we're not in the firehouse like professionals are. So we have to come from our homes to the fire department, get an engine and go. From the time that person says, oh my goodness, I'm scared, I better call the fire department, calls the fire department, to the time that we arrive, has to be less than 10 minutes because that person is going through emotional stress and you don't know what's going on in their mind. Now we might go, it's your fire alarm goes off because you didn't change the battery or, I mean, we had one the other day where they were running their shower and the steam from the shower triggered the alarm. The average person doesn't know this. They don't understand why. All they know is my alarms are going off. My alarms are telling me something's wrong. We come on the scene and the lesson for sales is you now have to approach them with no assumptions about what is wrong and allow them to tell you what they believe is wrong so that you can calm them down. Because what they're really calling you for is they're calling you for assurance. Now, obviously, if the house is on fire, if they're in a car accident, they're calling you more for a little bit of assurance, but they're still calling you for that. Well, in a sales situation, that's why the buyer is speaking to you because they need assurance also. They need assurance that you can help them. They need assurance that they're not making a mistake in speaking to you. It's very much the same. And so you learn to approach the situation with confidence, with certainty, so that you give them confidence. I have no idea what's going on in the scene when I show up. Now I have to assess the scene. I have to assess them. They have to explain to me why they're concerned, and I have to be able to calm them down. You have to do the same thing in sales. It's just not as dramatic.
Fantastic. John, if you could get every tech founder to master one single skill from your S3 system, what would it be and why?
What I'm focused on with everybody I work with is to take them through MUVS because MUVS is foundational. There are pieces after MUVS that are part of S3, but we're not getting there until we get through MUVS. There are concepts and techniques that make additional sense, but if I can't get them through MUVS, I can't work with them on the other things. All right. So if you take a boxer and put him in the ring and the boxer can't bob and weave, what difference does it make to tell him to punch harder? If he can't bob and weave, he's going to get knocked out in the first round anyhow. So it doesn't make any difference, does it? It's why in French cooking, which is the basis of all Western cooking, you had to master, I think it was 5 techniques. And if you didn't master those 5 techniques, the advanced techniques didn't make any difference because they wouldn't work. We have this propensity to want to buy things that are going to give us immediate answers and that are going to solve the problems, when what we tend to forget is that if you don't do the basics, the other stuff just doesn't work. But we make a lot of money selling people on the belief that they can buy something advanced and have it work. Guys, it simply doesn't work.
Wow. What gives you the most hope about the future of sales as a profession? Especially, I mean, with the rise of AI and automation.
So I have come through technology when we sold hardware, before we sold software, when systems didn't do much of anything. And I've watched all of these changes, and everybody gets upset every time we have a change and say, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? I've been through a number of recessions, economic downturns, the Y2K, if you remember that. Everybody screamed, we're never going to be able to sell during Y2K. I was the number one salesperson in the company I was with at the time because my customers didn't understand why they should be concerned. They just kept going because they had businesses to run. AI is a problem if you allow it to be a problem. It is going to be challenging. There is no question it is going to be challenging. Very challenging. If you look, though, the people who are benefiting right now from it the most are the younger generations because they're so comfortable and skilled in technology. It's the older generations that don't have that kind of ability to absorb the technology. So we will have some bad times through this. There will be people that are hurt. There are being people that are being hurt right now and that might never work again in a traditional corporate environment. I'm not saying that's good. I'm saying it just is. But there also will be opportunities that will open up. They said, look at all the advances in medicine that we're getting, all the cures that we're getting, and healthcare is the largest employer right now, and with the employer with the most shortage of work right now. So sales to me has always realistically been about, one, identifying the challenge that the buyer is trying to solve, earning their trust, and then helping them figure out how to solve that challenge. AI is just going to be one other component. It's going to solve some of the challenges for us. It can, but there's still going to be new challenges. And at the end of the day, people are still going to need help. We just don't know what that help looks like. Will we need as many salespeople as we have today? No, but we've been losing salespeople every year because the lower level tasks are being replaced by automation. But now the salespeople have to either up their game or get out of the business.
All
So
right.
it's not going to be easy. I want everybody to understand this is not going to be an easy transition, but it is not the end of the world.
Great. That was truly insightful. So in your work, which is about creating a reliable, repeatable system for one of the most human-centric business activities. So what does the word innovation truly mean to you today?
Relative to selling, I'm assuming you're meaning.
Yes.
Right. So innovation right now to me means the collection, assessment of data and turning that into knowledge. And to me, knowledge is actionable. We have more information out there on a daily basis, and the rate of information increase is going up faster every year. What do you do with it? How do you utilize it? How do you mine it? And that really, to me, is the promise of AI. I can get to the data faster. I can make sense out of it to help solve the problem that's on that person's mind at that moment. We've never had that opportunity before. Now the question becomes, how do you identify problems that you can solve with it and use it to solve those problems? That's innovation.
Awesome. That's quite a new one to hear. I mean, I have had conversations with several guests and asked the same question on innovation as it relates to their own field. And each time I get a new response, everyone sees innovation differently. That was a really interesting one there. So finally, for our listeners who are ready to clear the fog and look at their sales process systematically, you offer a way to connect. So where is the best place for them to, go learn more about your frameworks, follow you, or perhaps book a call with you?
There are two ways that they could do that. One is to go to the website, which is attitudeselling.com. And they can always schedule time with me, send me an email, etc., whatever they want to do. But they can also go on my LinkedIn because my publishing, we put more of my work on LinkedIn than anywhere else right now. So they can go to LinkedIn, read up when I post, and connect with me there. And just look for my pretty face on the LinkedIn, and they'll know which John Lester to look for because there's a few John Lesters. All right, but those are the two. I would say go in and look on LinkedIn, see what I'm writing about, see if it makes sense to you. If you have questions, you let me know.
Right. It's been a really interesting and insightful conversation with you today, and I am excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.